Number 10 sins you'll regret on your deathbed. Most people realize too late. One day, and you don't know the date, you will lie down for the last time. The room will go quiet, and in that silence, your whole life will replay in front of you, fast and honest, with nothing left to hide behind. Here's the strange part. In that final hour, almost no one regrets what they did. They regret what they kept putting off, the thing they swore they'd fix soon. Soon just never had a deadline. And the sins that haunt people at the end aren't the dramatic ones. They're ordinary, quiet, the kind you can commit your entire life without ever once feeling like a bad person, which is exactly what makes them so dangerous. Watch closely, because you are almost certainly guilty of 3 of these right now. And number 10 traps nearly everyone, but it's also the only one on this list you can still undo before this video ends. Procrastinated prayer. The time comes, you think, 2 more minutes. You finish the message, check one more thing, and 40 minutes later the window's gone. So you promise to make it up, and you almost never do. Nothing punishes you for this. No alarm, no consequence you can feel. That's the trap. The single most important appointment of your day gets quietly outranked by the least important things you'll ever touch. In your last week, you won't lie there wishing you'd answered more emails. But every time you were called to stand before God and chose a screen instead, those you'll count. The man who says later, his whole life runs out of laters. One ordinary afternoon. When the call comes, move. Neglected parents. There's a phone call you've been meaning to make for about 3 weeks. You'll do it this weekend. You said that last weekend too. This sin doesn't feel like cruelty. It feels like being busy. And the people who once stayed awake for you, who gave when they had nothing, they don't complain. They just wait by a phone that rings a little less each year. I've watched grown men break at a graveside, not over what they said, but over everything they meant to say and assumed they had time for. So make it concrete, not this week, today. Call them, or just go sit with them. You are not too busy. You only think you are, and one day that excuse will cost you more than you can imagine. Careless words. It takes 3 seconds, a bit of gossip at lunch, a cruel line you fired off because you were angry and wanted to win. It felt like nothing leaving your mouth, and that's the danger. We act like words evaporate. They don't. They lodge in someone's chest and live there for years after you've forgotten saying them. You move on by sundown. They carry it for a decade, and you rarely get the chance to apologize, because half the time you never even learn the damage you did, the reputation you dented in passing, the kid who believed the joke you made. So before it leaves your tongue, ask one question. Would I want this said over my own grave? If not, swallow it. Pride never shows up wearing its own name. It shows up as being right, as I'm not apologizing first. I didn't start it. As a quiet certainty that you're a cut above everyone around you. That's why almost no one fights it. It doesn't feel like a flaw, it feels like dignity. Meanwhile, it builds walls between you and everyone who loves you, and convinces you that you have nothing to fix. That's the most dangerous thing a person can believe. Look at any cemetery. The proud and the humble are buried in identical ground. Under the same silence, every wall pride ever built comes down in the same instant. So lower yourself now, by choice, while it still counts for something, or have it done to you later, when it counts for nothing. Greed, it never calls itself greed. It calls itself ambition, providing, being responsible. And somewhere in there, the means quietly becomes the whole point. The next number, the next upgrade, the endless a little more and then I'll rest. But watch what it actually delivers. You trade your health to build the wealth, then spend the wealth trying to claw the health back. You miss your child's entire childhood, earning a future they only ever wanted you present for. Then it ends, and you meet the rule nobody escapes. Not one coin follows you past the door. No one reaches the end wishing they'd spent more hours at the office. They wish they'd been there. Hold money in your hands. Just never let it move into your heart. Broken ties, think of someone in your own family you haven't spoken to in years. Now try to remember the actual reason. You can't quite reconstruct it, can you? Some slight, some pride, a door that closed and nobody reopened. We tell ourselves we're justified. They should call first. So both of you wait, guarding the same locked door, while a countdown neither of you can see runs quietly down. This is the regret that truly haunts people. The reconciliation that came one day too late. The number you finally decided to dial. That nobody picks up anymore. So be the one who breaks first, even if you were wronged. 10 minutes of swallowed pride is nothing next to carrying that silence into a grave. Grudges, someone hurt you, and it was real. Let's not pretend otherwise. So you held on, you replayed it, you kept the wound open on purpose, because letting go felt like letting them win. But here's what no one tells you. They stopped feeling it years ago. You're the only one still serving the sentence. Bitterness is a poison you keep drinking while waiting for the other person to suffer, and they're out there, living their life. It hardens you slowly. The warmth you were born with quietly leaves, and you don't notice the day it's gone. Nobody on their deathbed wishes they'd held the grudge a little longer. So put it down. Not for them, they don't need it. For you, so you can finally feel light again. Wasted time. This is the one nobody warns you about, because it doesn't feel like a sin at all. It feels like unwinding. One more episode. One more scroll. A pleasant foggy hour that changes nothing. Repeated about 10,000 times, you spend time like a man who thinks his pockets are bottomless. But your life holds a fixed number of mornings, and a final sunrise already has your name on it. You just don't know the date. Run the math you've been avoiding, the hours you've poured into things you can't even remember a week later. That's not rest. It's a slow leak in the one tank that never refills. Time is the currency every dying person wishes they'd saved, and the one thing no money can buy back. Tonight, ask yourself honestly, what am I spending my one life on? Spiritual drift. You never decided to walk away from it. The book just migrated off the table into a drawer, then somewhere you'd have to go looking for it. Replaced by 1,000 louder voices, all promising direction and handing you noise. That's what makes this so deceptive. Nothing feels lost in the moment, but a heart cut off from its source dries out without ever feeling the thirst. You start hunting for peace in every place except the one it was actually kept, then wonder why nothing ever fills the hole. The dying don't wish they'd read more headlines. They wish they'd returned sooner to the words that could have steadied their entire life. Open it again. One page. Tonight, the door back was never locked. People just stop knocking and assume it was. Delayed repentance. And here it is, the master sin, the one underneath all 9 before it. That calm, reasonable voice that says, I'll get serious about my soul later. I'm still young. There's time. This is the lie that protects every other sin on this list. As long as you believe tomorrow is guaranteed, you will never change today. You'll just keep scheduling the better version of yourself for a date that never arrives. Sit with one fact. The deathbed is crowded with people who fully intended to turn their lives around. They weren't evil, and they weren't careless. They simply thought they had more time than they were given. Their only mistake was assuming later would still be there. You are hearing this with a working heart and breath still in your chest. That is the window, and it does not stay open. So don't carry into your final hour a regret you could erase tonight. The best time to come back was years ago. The second best is right now, before this ends. 10 sins, and not one of them needed you to be a villain. They slip in through ordinary Tuesdays, through later, through silence and a scrolling thumb. And every one of them is only ever fixed by people who refuse to wait for a deadline they cannot see. You are not on that deathbed today. That is the mercy of this reminder. Everything we just named is still within your reach, while your hands can still act and your heart can still soften. So don't simply nod and forget this by morning. Pick one, just one of the 10, and change it before you sleep tonight. Then send this to someone you'd hate to lose. It may be the warning that reaches them in time. And tell me below, which number hit you the hardest? Be honest, I'll read every one.